Okay, thank you everyone for making it here to the end. Hope you've had a great day of learning and connecting with others.
That was awesome, man.
Just a couple things in case you cut out a little bit early.
Hey.
We would really appreciate your feedback. A lot of people have been coming up to me and Dan throughout the day and complimenting us on the program and the lineup of speakers who have shared their knowledge and experience. I'd really appreciate it if you could convey that in one way or another on the evaluation form that's in your folder. Okay, that helps us improve our programs and it helps me show that we're delivering programs that are meaningful to you. Okay, it shouldn't take you long. So just complete that, and before you leave, either drop it on a table in the back, and we have a box set up on a table as you leave the facility. So thank you for doing that. Another thing, I hate to see all these things accumulating in the trash. I reuse them, and it saves me on my programming. We have another box. You can just throw them in the box on your way out, and we can reuse them for other programs. All right, so for this closing panel, you may have heard these speakers throughout today and yesterday. And the idea was just to bring together folks that we brought in from other states with different situations, different experiences, different knowledge, and also the fact that they have a lot of years of experience with organic farming, okay? In Indiana, we still have a fairly immature organic farming community, right? We don't have a lot of seasoned, long-term organic farmers. And I think it's important for us to hear from those who have been in this part of agriculture for years, as a lot of us are trying to move acreage in and get into organic farming, to learn from their experiences and what it takes to be successful over time, okay? It takes 3 years to transition ground into organic. It doesn't take 3 years to go back over the field with a sprayer full of Roundup, right? We don't have to transition back to conventional. It's pretty easy to pull that trigger. And so I think it's important to learn from these folks what it takes to stay with it and continue for time. So that's kind of the purpose of the panel. We'll see where it goes, and Dan's going to moderate for us. You guys can share this.
All right, pretty excited about this. Just so you guys do know, I have to leave right at 5. I have a preschooler cowboy dad party to be at, an hour from here.
Not to be missed.
So
We'll shoot you out.
we're going to be fast and efficient. But do ask questions. I just got a couple opening questions on the topic Mike mentioned, and then you can submit through the app if you want, but also just raise your hand. We'll just try to make it casual and really mine these guys' wisdom so that we can reproduce it ourselves, right, here in Indiana. Okay, so a lot of you maybe aren't familiar exactly where these guys are at, so I just want each one of you to take 2 or 3 minutes, just say where you are, where you farm, acres you farm, your crops, your markets, and how long you've been organic. So just kind of real quick, go down the line. So we'll start here with Sandy.
Sandy Syburg.
Yeah, he's got to hold it.
Got to hold it close? Okay, Sandy Syburg, Oconomowoc, Wisconsin. That's about halfway between Madison and Milwaukee. 400 certified organic acres. Been farming organically since 1988. Wide diversity of crops, from seed crops, oilseed crops, food grade, edibles.
Good enough.
Hello, I'm Gary McDonald.
Yeah.
Farms around Mason City, Illinois. Right now I'm just farming 110 acres. I started out back in 1980-81 with 840, transitioned to what would be certified organic today. And I raise corn, soybeans, wheat. I used to raise oats and wheat. And I guess that's all I have.
I got my own thing. Thor, Oechsner, I've explained this 3 times, so I'm probably boring everybody. So I'm from New York State in the Finger Lakes region. We farm 1,200 acres, all certified organic, and I started farming organically in 1993. With 3 acres of vegetables, and we sell into the dairy feed. We sell into the food grade markets, distilleries, malt houses, breweries, other small flour mills. We process grain on our farm and sell it We process seed on our farm and sell it. And I also am part owner of a flour mill and a bakery, where I also market a lot of my grain through those channels.
My name is Jack Geiger. I farm in God's country, that would be Kansas, the extreme northeast corner, in a part of Kansas that is considered to be the Corn Belt. Father first certified in '89. I came back from the university in '93, and I've farmed organically since '93. Various involvement things with OCIA and trying to do things like we're doing here today, and that's encouraging another generation of organic producers. Our operation is a highly mixed operation, cropping, livestock, all the way to finished livestock, and been a lot of places and done a lot of different things, but our farm is the best place to be, and Northeast Kansas is the best place to be. But the things that we do with mixed crop and livestock can be replicated anywhere from here to Pennsylvania, and it can go west. Well, New York included. We've sold seed wheat into the state of New York, and so the differences that we have geographically, we have a lot in common, from the eastern part of Kansas all the way to the eastern seaboard.
All right, thanks, gentlemen. Jack, maybe just start with you. Thinking about how long you've been doing this, and you know, there's a lot of young faces in the crowd, a lot of guys just starting doing this. What are the top 3 things? You could go production, you could go mindset, you could go management, should be done to farm organically long term?
I was supposed to think about this question beforehand, wasn't I, Dan?
Yeah, I did give it to him beforehand.
The most important thing, you know, we're all formed by our environment and our background, and I've shared this yesterday, that my background was the 1980s, the farm crisis. Those were my formative years in high school, et cetera, and when I entered the university. But the biggest thing that I would say, farming is a way of life. I think we share that with all farmers, conventional or organic. Farming is a way of life, and you try and dedicate to it. But the piece of wisdom that I would share and that has helped me through the years is, regardless of the production model, I attempt to be the low-cost producer. That is a term that has resonance with me. Some of that comes from, you know, my education. Some of that comes from the background of the 80s, but I attempt to be the low-cost producer in whatever I do. And I think that strategy has served me well and would serve me well in whatever agriculture venture that I undertook. Efficiency is important, and being the low-cost producer.
So you wouldn't worship at the altar of high yield? Is that another way to say it?
So yield means nothing to me. It's a bragging right at the co-op. The number that means something to me is the net return per acre. That is the number that I track. I track that, and then I track cash on hand. And I try and, you know, prevent my equipment addiction. Apparently I have an addiction to shiny equipment, my wife tells me. But I try and make sure that, you know, that net and that this bank account don't get too far out of line.
Thor, how would you respond to what's the top 3 things?
Top 3, I didn't think about this either, but you know, I would say some of the things that I've found important going forward, especially when I was starting out, is, you know, connect with some farmers in your area that are experienced and ask a lot of questions. I used to go, in New York we have a group called NICO, where we get together in the winter for every second Tuesday of the month, and it's all young organic farmers and older organic farmers, and everybody gets together and we take some topics and we go through planter adjustments or tine weeder adjustments, or have a forum where you can ask a lot of questions, no matter how stupid they might sound to you. They're all questions that these other guys have had as well. And I went in and I asked stupid question after stupid question. And I think what's great about the organic community is everybody is there to help each other. Everybody wants to see everybody succeed. There's no competition. It's all about raising everybody up. So, use that. And for me, that was invaluable getting started. And other thing is just stay curious, experiment, try new things. Don't be afraid of failure. Don't be afraid what your neighbors are going to think of you, because you're going to have some bombs and they're going to laugh at you. But I'll tell you what, I'm laughing all the way to the bank, because I'm making more money than any of my neighbors, I can guarantee it. And, as Jack said, it's about the bottom line. And I might not have, 180 bushel corn, but that's okay to me. It isn't all about yield. It's about what do you got at the end. And, there's a lot of, I get a sustainability class from Cornell comes to my farm every year. We talk about sustainability. You can talk about that and environmental sustainability, and I think that's really important, and that's one of the reasons I'm in to this. But there's also the sustainability of the family farm. And we need to keep all these family farms alive and on the land. And, for me, I don't think I would be farming if it wasn't for organic and what that has brought to the table. Other thing I would say is, there's all this production stuff and it's all kind of overwhelming, but you can do it, stay confident, and spend a lot of time on markets. There's a lot of really interesting markets out there with organic. Spend some time, figure that part out, because really, in terms of the income on my little family farm, that's sort of been the key to the whole thing, is being curious about markets, finding out what they were, figuring out how you can get into those and sell into those markets. And that's been really important to me, in the long haul, to keep my farm viable. So those would be, is that 3 things?
That's more than that, but you're okay. We'll allow that. All right, Gary, your thoughts.
I'll add a little bit to what they said, but they have said it very well. For me, if I had to do over again, I'd try to duplicate what happened to me, and that was there were some very successful farmers that were very consistent with what they did, and so I would advise you to find somebody as close to you as possible that you like what you see with their farm operation. If they haven't got a handle on what they're doing and they're still stumbling and having trouble, I would keep looking for that person that's got a pretty good idea of how to make this thing work, and you like what you see. You can find those kind of people by talking to some of the vendors that know a lot of different farmers, and they know who's got it happening, who's making it happening, and who's got a good handle on it. And call those people up, get to know them, ask them to go out for a cup of coffee, give them $100 for an hour of their time or something. Build a relationship with somebody and hold on to them tight. That's what I did. I didn't try to learn from 100 different people. It got too confusing. I found somebody that had what I liked, and I hung on to that concept and that idea and stuck with it and put the blinders on. The other thing is always remember it's your 3-pound brain, and you want to protect your 3-pound brain, and it's the thing that's going to develop the passion that's going to get it from your head to your heart, so you'll do whatever it takes to make this happen.
Sandy?
So, again, to add what they're talking about, I think some of the most severe compaction that I've encountered on farms in my lifetime is between the ears of the farmer. So I think to sum up what they're saying is keep an open mind and be open to learning. I have participated in the Moses mentoring, farmer-to-farmer mentoring program. I know that there's some mentors down here in Indiana as well. That's been very enjoyable for me to take farmers young and old, and do what I can to help them through the transition process. So networking, whether it's a local group, whether it's a national group, whether it's a group you create. I farm in a county that has a little over 90,000 crop acres, and up until last year, I've been the only certified organic farm. So I've been on a bit of an island. And so from that standpoint, I'm enjoying the process of now being able to potentially help others. Creating markets, searching out markets is one of the things that I find that's enjoyable. Growing things that other people don't grow or maybe haven't been grown in our area for quite some time. is I think an important opportunity. And then, my grandfather always told me when I was looking to make changes to the farm in the 80s, that he was completely open to the concept, but, he insisted on failing small and failing fast. So, if you're going to try something different, try something new, which I completely support and do every year, but don't go all in. Don't bet the farm on it.
All right, so this next question, and it kind of gets at this idea of, and maybe you guys have some numbers you can give, but what are some things that contribute to failure of beginning transitioning organic farmers? So what have you seen, or what have you done yourself maybe, that you thought was a great idea and caused you to fail?
I can start out with that one. I talked about this a little bit, but one thing that I found in organic agriculture is, when I started into this, I thought more fertility was going to be better, and ended up over-applying manure to fields and ended up with weed problems that I'm still trying to chase down. So, I would say, just as in life, do everything in moderation in terms of fertility amendments, and, don't think that, adding more is going to be better. The soil can do a lot for you without putting a ton of different things on it, and just be moderate in that respect, because when I started out, I went bananas with this stuff, and I created a total mess. So that would be my little sage advice and massive screw up from when I got started.
So I am not immune to inputs and chasing inputs to chase yields. And when I came home from the university, I had some bright ideas that we were going to ban corn gluten to work as a weed suppressant during cultivation, and that we were going to, side dress some liquid fish. And I spent a bunch of money rigging up a planter and rigging up a cultivator. And, here we are 20 years later, and I don't think I ever used them after those first 2 years. And the funny thing is that my yields have improved steadily. And the limiting factor was, this thing right here. It was being able to, you have to get out of the conventional paradigm mindset that you're going to buy a solution for a problem you have today. And you have to adopt a mindset that I'm going to engineer a solution for the problem 6 months from now. I'm going to engineer a systemic solution to head off the problem before it occurs. You have to come up with systemic solutions to the problem. You can't buy silver bullets. I mean, you can try, but it is not as sustainable as going slow a little bit. The fail quick and fail small. Learn your lessons and figure out how to engineer a solution.
Yeah, Gary or Sandy, anything else to add?
Yeah, the only thing I would add would be, that when it's come to my failures, and that I've learned from those, is usually knowing when to quit. In other words, you've planted a crop, you've had weather that's been challenging. We're loss adverse as human beings, so we don't want to give up the effort, the labor, the time, the seed, whatever we put into the soil. But finding a shorter day corn, switching to a different crop, and preventing the weeds from adding to your seed bank, and having a plan B. I know that some of the people that have had diverse rotations have talked about that, and I think diversity in your rotation, adds to your capability to do that, obviously, but learning how and learning from those challenges so that you know when to pull the pin.
Well, it's hard to add to that, what these guys have said. I guess just don't get baked in the squat. Measure twice, cut once. Make sure you're ready and committed before you make a move. Because if you're not all in on that operation, you might do it halfway, and halfway just doesn't cut it in this business. So you've got to do everything you can to the level of excellence that you can muster.
All right. So you guys have all kind of alluded to it, but how would you advise, especially thinking about the Midwest context, how do you begin to find markets? How do you develop markets? I mean, the question is, do I really need to direct market the stuff coming off my farm? I mean, I think for a lot of us with that commodity mindset, that's a different.
So, I don't know what's going to happen here in Indiana, but when we started in the early 90s, I hauled grain to Mississippi. I've told this story to several people. We hauled grain to Mississippi. We hauled grain to Wisconsin because that's where the market was. And now I am blessed in that I have a corn purchaser that's about 30 miles from my house. I have a soybean facility about 40 miles. The markets are developing and the markets are here. Now, if you want to do niche production or do seed production or do value added, that's going to take some more effort. But we are blessed today in that we have organic markets that are readily quite available. In America, the sad reality is, somebody showed the graphic, we're importing 70% of our soybeans from foreign countries. We're importing roughly half of our corn. In the last couple years, I had a long boom time where I was selling wheat. We were not importing wheat, and wheat was a scarce commodity. And I was seeing organic milling wheat in the $14 to $20 range. Well, the core reality is 3 years ago, the U.S. started importing wheat from South America. And so we have a price floor under wheat now. Organic wheat, milling quality, will probably run in the $12 to $14 range. That's just an economic market reality. At the same time that floor was put under wheat, we have new processors coming online. Demand is going up, and so that is a positive thing. I have more venues or more markets for organic wheat. So it's a give and a take. Marketing is not the problem that anybody thinks it is.
Interesting.
For me.
I don't know that I can speak to this question. I mean, my marketing situation in New York is probably so vastly different than what you've got in Indiana.
You built it, right? It wasn't like you just were born and it was there and you walked into it.
This is correct. So, but a lot of that was absolute dumb luck on my part. When I got into flour milling, I had the idea. I had no idea that there would be a market for it. I just, ignorance has been my guiding light on a lot of things that I've done. And I just go into them and then somehow they seem to work out. And I think that's a lot of luck. And it just so happened when I got into trying to produce local organic flour, that was the one thing in the locavore movement, which, I don't know if we were talking over dinner about how, right here that hadn't hit as hard as it has in New York, but New York City is just this gigantic, insatiable market for food. I mean, people down there are willing to pay for good food. They want local food. They want organic food. So when we got started in this, and they found out that we were starting a flour mill, the people from Green Market in New York City actually came up to us, said, "What are you doing? We heard you're starting a flour mill." And they got us down into the city at the markets down there. And the next thing we knew, they had us at the best market at Union Square selling our flour, and then they contacted all these bakeries, ore washers, and these other guys down there, these old famous bakeries, to come down, make bread for our flour. Next thing we knew, there was a loaf of bread on the cover of the New York Times food section made with our flour. And so, the whole marketing thing was being at the right place at the right time initially. And then there's with any sort of success like that, there's so many people that were involved with helping us out and pushing us along and promoting us and believing in us, and those bakers helped work with us to produce better flour because they wanted to see a local organic product. Now, those are the kind of people you need to try to connect with to get yourself off the ground. I don't know how to tell you how to do that in Indiana or in the Midwest, but that's what happened with us. And as an outgrowth of starting that mill, when the distilleries and the malt houses started to pop up right after that, again, dumb luck on my part, I was positioned where my name was out there as a food grade producer. I had processing equipment because of the mill, and a lot of these people were asking, where can I get this, blah, 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 and they started coming to me, and we got in on the ground floor on a lot of these distillery startups. And then they said someone else asked them, and then I started going to a lot of events. So I would go down to New York City to they would have events, New York City Beer Week, and we would go down there and be the featured farmer, and I'd go down and drink beer with all these great people, and they would ask about the grain, and then the word would get around. So you have to enjoy people and enjoy working with those customers and be enthusiastic and be interested in what they do. And I always go visit all the places that I sell to. I invite them to the farm. A lot of them, they'll come up and we had some guy come with a drone and do all this footage, and they put it on their website. People want to connect with farmers, and this is a growing trend, and you have to tap into that. Then we built a simple website, and that's been a total boom. Everybody Googles everything. New York state-grown grain, and up comes Oechsner Farms, and we get a lot of calls that way. And know how to talk intelligently about what you do as a farmer and about the quality specs that they're going to want to hear about, because once they hear you can do that and they know what you're talking about and you can deliver the goods, then that it sort of feeds on itself. I know my friend Harold from Illinois was here. He started this flour mill and spoke with me this afternoon, and he's doing the same thing. He's going down to Indianapolis to talk to a bakery right now. And then he's going up to Chicago to a baking event with my friend Amy, where Amy's speaking. He's going to meet with bakers. So you got to get out there, and it takes some effort, but it's fun effort, in my opinion. So that was way long-winded.
No. How do you find markets? How do you develop markets? Maybe, Gary, you could speak to the Midwest, what you kind of see happening.
Well, I'd like to speak to the person out here that you're sitting there and you haven't had a lot of experience, interacting with people. I come from a background where I was kind of shy and introverted, as you could tell today. But really, I come up out on the farm and didn't know how to talk to people. I wasn't comfortable talking to people, and then over time I developed, I call it my line of BS. When I've always got something I can say. It just after you do it a while, you get comfortable with people and you learn how to enjoy talking to them. So I really, really enjoy people. And if you're sitting here and you're afraid to pick up that phone and make a call, because I think the telephone is a real magical tool, that when I call somebody and I'm marketing grain or hunting for a market, I don't think of it as marketing. I think of it as just calling, seeing how they're doing, seeing what the markets are doing. I'm gathering information and having a good time. And if they're needing something, they know now they've got an opportunity, an open door to ask me what I do and what I've got, and what else is out there. They might be needing some certified organic white corn, for example, food grade. And then I will help them find what they need. And so I developed that rapport. What I guess I'm really trying to say is, don't be afraid and pick up the phone and talk to people. It may be just talk to somebody that you know in the industry that's on the same side of the fence as you. They're producers. Find out from them what they've heard. One year I was talking to some people, and I'd found out that they had sold their certified organic blue corn, got a contract for $11 FOB. I had already sold some for $19.50 a bushel. Now you see, because there was no communication there, just by happenstance there wasn't communication, they missed out on $8.50 a bushel. We mustn't let that happen. Have 5 people, have a rule that you never sell anything until you talk to 5 people, maybe a friend that's in the industry, that's another producer, what have they heard? So that you don't let somebody take something from you that's worth far more than you're letting it go for. Now, we don't have those swings now like we used to have, but I used to get some pretty big numbers just because I would shake the bushes, and I just enjoy talking to people. I didn't get mad if they gave me some lowball price, because it's their job to buy it as cheap as possible. If I was on their side of the fence, I'd be better at buying it cheaper than they were, So they're doing their job, and we must do our job either, and that's communicate amongst ourselves and find out what other people are getting for their products, so you don't get yours taken from you for $1 less. And if you got a 10,000 bushel, that's $10,000. and that's a lot of money. So that's the only thing I can tell you. Finding markets for me has been easy because basically there's people who've already developed these markets. I just want to make sure I call all of them. So I've got a call list. I've got all the people that I market to on a list. When I get ready to sell my corn, I want to know what the going price is. So I start calling all of them, ask them where the price is at, and calling some of the farmers out there I know and see what they're getting. And it'll make you great dividends just in a short couple hours.
Markets are maturing though, and even by exhibitors here, I know DeLong has been trading in organic grains now 2 or 3 years. I'm a member of Crop Cooperative. Organic Valley has a feed department. You don't have to be a crop member. Their feed department does buy and sell, trade on spot markets. So they're another resource that's out there that any farmer, any organic farmer could call and see what their bids are. I think you're going to start to see other grain companies as well, start to enter into this market, and that certainly is going to cover some of the corn and soybean shortfalls that are there. And if you then also build out your rotation for some of these other crops, hopefully, I don't know if I saw one cover crop field on my drive here from Wisconsin, but eventually neighbors and friends will start growing cover crops. That'll create a demand for local seed production, even holding seed back for your own farm. So I think the marketing is there, and certainly if people are concerned or scared about vertical integration or finding niche markets, that shouldn't be a barrier to entering or transitioning organic acres. There's plenty of ways, as everyone else on the panel has said, but also including those grain buyers and brokers that are out there already.
All right. We have had a couple questions come in, and if you had to remove something from the NOP, what would it be?
That's a loaded question.
We're keeping the mic away from you. If you had to take something away from the NOP, what would it be?
Yeah, remove or add.
Remove or add.
I thought it was more interesting to take it away, but. I like this. I like this awkward tension. This is good.
There were going to be some wisecracks. No, what I desire from the NOP is uniform enforcement of the standard, and we do not have uniform enforcement of the standard. And every day that goes by and continues to go by, we see a dilution of the term organic, and we see gaming of the system among the different certifiers. So that might be shop talk. That might not have been an appropriate remark, but.
Yeah, I think the hydroponics rule that they put in, it doesn't go with organic, in my opinion. I mean, maybe by the letter, and I agree on the enforcement. I mean, certainly some of these livestock farms where they've got these chickens that have a little door at the end of the thing, and that's supposed to be pasture chicken. I think what we all have to remember, and I always have to remind myself of, is, somebody in a store is paying extra to buy what we grow. And what are they thinking about, and are we doing that? If they're buying, something, are they expecting a corn, soybean, corn, wheat, corn, soybean, corn rotation? No, they're expecting us to add diversity and build soil, and they're expecting cows to be out on pasture and things to be raised humanely by small family farms. That's all of us. So, this isn't really answering the question, but I think it's always important, and I always remind myself, those people are voting for a certain type of agriculture, and what am I doing to fulfill that? When I'm doing something such as mow down a clover crop and I'm not harvesting anything off of it and to build the soil, and I'm not really making any money doing that instead of baling it, that's what people are expecting us to do. So that's part of that pay premium that we get. It isn't all about, I'm going to make more money, I'm going to take. It's about giving back and giving people what they want when they buy that extra bit from the organic seal. So that's an important thing I keep in my head all the time.
Well, that's really good. I don't know how I'm going to answer as far as take something away. When I started, there was no premium on organic. Corn was $1.50 a bushel, and soybeans were $6 a bushel. And after a couple years, I found a buyer out in California that made tofu, so I ended up raising some soybeans for him for $1.50 premium, and that was pretty much all through the 80s. And so, sometimes I think people, no fault of their own, take what we have for granted. And sometimes we get a little loose with it, not we, but the whole thing, allowing it to get so watered down concerns me greatly. The consumer is what brought us here. Without the consumer, we'd be back, where conventional is. And so I think it's very important that we continue to tighten up the regs, not make them looser. But it seems like, for some reason, they're getting looser and looser and looser. And that needs to somehow be headed off at the pass and turned around.
Yeah, it's hard to add to all that, but the recent Farm Bill has added, some enforcement dollars. I think there were some good wins in the Farm Bill. I'm sure there's a lot of publications out there that spell out those individual components. But the one thing that did kind of slip through, and the NOP and NOSB have not done, is some of the livestock ruling. Certainly the welfare thing slid through and slid away, not because it wasn't all approved and ready to go, but because it was vetoed by the administration. But there's another piece on livestock that allows, that there's a loophole there, and it goes back to Jack's enforcement component that allows some dairies to, well, the way the ruling is now is it can only transition your cows once, right? But there are dairies that are taking calves and moving them out and raising them conventionally, and then bringing them back in, using that same sort of one-time transition rule on a per cow, per animal basis instead of on a per farm basis. That's something that, if there is a comment period and anybody gets an opportunity to do that, I don't care whether you're a grain farmer or not, because livestock eat corn. So, it affects us all. But that's one thing that needs to be, from a takeaway standpoint, needs to be taken care of.
All right, thank you for that feedback. I think I'm going to open it up to the audience. I'll just grab your mic here, Sandy. Mike, if you want to walk that around. I did have some quick, kind of very specific production-minded questions, so I'll throw them out to you guys. Is gypsum, as a byproduct of coal-fired power plants, can it be used as a soil amendment in organic production? Okay, there's your answer. Because it's not a mined source. That's the easy answer. Yeah, it's a synthetically byproduct. Yeah. Tim.
Okay, so my question is about dicamba, and I'm curious, especially for Gary and maybe for Jack, is this something that concerns you, the volatilization of things that are coming into your farm, or is it you're not concerned about it?
Okay, so I do produce some soybeans that are seed stock, and they are foundation varieties. And so when dicamba got strong here a year ago, I went and approached all my neighbors. I offended some of them, but I had the conversation, and they know, because we have had, issues in the past where litigation resulted, that, boys, if you drift these foundation beans that are seed stock, you're going to be buying some land. It's land you will never farm, but you're going to be buying some land. And, I don't want to be the, I want to say a-hole, but that's probably not the correct word. I'm not trying to, push down on anybody. But I think that, there's a core fundamental thing about respect of private property and neighbors respecting each other. And, we have had some incidents with that in the past. To me, I find it ironic that a bunch of the, the technologies, if you will, that we undertake, that are, the profit from those technologies are going to external entities, and the risks are being borne by the local people. And to me, that is wrong. And so I'm not a big fan of dicamba, but I didn't get drifted. I haven't got drifted to date. And lo and behold, two of my neighbors told me, we're not using dicamba technology. We refuse to use it. And, so it was an eye-opening, and it was an educational experience for several people.
Yeah. Oh, Gary. Yeah.
I'm very concerned about it. I've already had some experience, not with dicamba, but with another issue where they got in the wrong field. And because I was working on this farm with a large farm management firm, they have the leverage, because they do a lot of business all over central Illinois, that no ag distributor would for a minute want to not treat them fairly. And so we were compensated fairly for our loss, because it threw us out of certification on that small piece of ground. But if I'd have been just me, maybe they wouldn't have listened to me. I would have gotten nowhere. So it does very, very much concern me, because you're talking about an economic situation that could put somebody's livelihood out in harm's way. So it's a serious issue.
Yeah, this question's for Gary. On your system, do you think, you're talking about wanting to reduce your tillage inputs and stuff. Do you think it'd be possible to do that in strips, or not till the whole field, maybe 10-inch strips every 30-inch centers? I don't think the equipment really exists yet to do that, but do you think it's possible?
Well, I'm sure it's possible. Yes.
We just don't know how yet. Right. Maybe as Mike makes his way to someone else with a question, do you guys, and maybe Gary, since you travel the most and kind of visit with a lot of farmers, is there a number out there for every 10 farmers that get into organics, how many fail? Like, what's the success rate? Do you have a notion of that?
Not really. I do have a notion about it. 7 years seems to be the magical year. When it comes to all the problems culminating, it takes about 7 years. And what happens is, if we don't start turning the soil around and getting it better, then it's getting worse. And it's kind of like every morning I wake up in the morning, and you won't believe this, I don't notice any difference in myself. But over time, I get a little bit thicker on this side and a little bit smaller on this side, and one of these days I'm going to be headed out to the kitchen for breakfast and my pants are going to fall down, It happens so subtly and so slowly, and that's what happens with these weed control problems and insect control situations where they start taking over the farm. It's so subtle. We think, well, it was because it was a wet year this year. It's because of this excuse. And it keeps tightening the noose all the time until we've got ourselves into a bad situation. And that's how I see a lot of them get taken out, is they don't, they get numbed, they get lulled to sleep, and they don't realize what's happening. And there they are, they get down the road and they can't control the weeds with any mechanical tool. The grass outgrows the corn, the weeds outgrow the corn, and they're frustrated, and pretty soon they're out of business.
Anyone else have a number or approach they would?
So I had a good friend from over in Ohio here. He was a longtime OCIA member, probably, part of anybody on this board or on this panel. But Steve made a joke. In OCIA, we have seen, that it seemed that low commodity prices would bring a wave of organic farmers. And Steve liked to quip that we would, when a wave of new organic farmers come, we would see 10 new farmers, and 5 would survive, and 3 of those would turn into really good farmers. And the other thing that he would say, there's a transition of 3 years to become organic. There's probably a transition of about 10 years to figure out how to be successful and how to make things work and to be comfortable. And before you think that after 10 years, you're God and you know everything, this last year I was confronted with a situation that I hadn't seen. And I attribute it to some of the extreme environmental things that we have. But I made some big mistakes planting. They were beginner mistakes that I shouldn't have made. And as a result, I had some weedy fields that I wouldn't want to show you guys. And, that's it's a learning, it's a constant learning, but it's like life. Life is a constant learning experience too.
So I just want to repeat that a little bit. So you're saying for every 10 guys that start, 5 will make it, and 3 will actually be really good at it. Yeah. Okay, so my challenge to Indiana is that we break that trend, right? That's what I'd like to see. So be better than Kansas. Be better than Kansas, yes!
Steve was from Ohio.
Oh, We can be better than a Buckeye, surely. No, sorry, Scott.
That's between you and them.
All right, any other questions out there? Quiet group, it is late. Well, how about a closing comment from you guys, maybe a word of encouragement, something to challenge us? Yeah. Jack, you have the mic.
Okay, so I do what I do. I go around to see some of these young faces out here and to interact with people. That's the reason I'm here today. I think that organic farming has the best potential for a young guy with minimal capital behind him to succeed as a farmer. And good luck. It can work. The same thing that, I told that story yesterday. I was basically a screw-up when we did the transition in the 80s and 90s, and I went and saw a farm just like Gary said. I went and toured an apostolic farm, and I saw, in effect, an organic farm that was working. And my brother Jesse and I went home and said, we're smarter than those guys. We may not have as much money, we may not have as nice of equipment, but we're as intelligent as they are. Why can't we do that? And we've gone home and we've done it.
Yeah, I would ditto those thoughts. Just from my own experience, I started out with absolutely zero in terms of a farm, and just stick with it, be smart, be curious, and I don't see a reason why everybody in this room can't be an organic farmer and be successful at it. I feel like if I was able to pull this off, anybody could pull it off, and I would say just be in it for the right reasons. I see these guys, they come in because of low commodity prices and they're just chasing a buck. That's not a good enough, if that's all you're thinking, that's not a good enough reason. You gotta love it, you gotta wanna learn it, because it's gonna be really hard and really challenging. And if, I farm all day long, and then when I go to bed at night, I read books about farming. I love farming. I'm constantly fascinated about farming, and the thing I love most is every year it kicks my ass. Every year it proves to me that I don't know what the hell I'm doing, because there's always something that comes up, like he said, that I have no idea, and I have to either research it or figure my way out of it, and I love that challenge. So if you're somebody who loves a challenge, if you want something cookbook, this isn't the career for you. But if you want a challenge, if you want to learn, if you want to have a lot of fun, I think it's a lot of fun. I think organic farming is really interesting and a good time. So,
I'm sure all these four guys, or all four of us up here, agree with this. But it takes something to pull all this together and put this on. I've always gotten a lot of support when I think back on my first years back in the 1980s when I was in my 20s. And there was 3 extension people from Springfield, Illinois that used to come to all my field days. And they were just like cheerleaders. I mean, it's like, wow, but I never felt much support from universities. But I have extension people. And I don't know who all's involved, Michael O'Donnell and Dan Perkins. I don't know who all's involved with making this happen. But I'm sure these guys agree with me, and all of you out there agree with me. Thank you from everybody.
yeah, there was this has been, I'll say it, these two guys have done a great job, and you've got an awesome resource here with these guys, because they believe it and they're doing a lot of hard work to get you set up. And I think this was an excellent event. I learned a lot and was a good primer for people that hadn't done organic before. I wish when I got started there was events like this. And yeah, that was good that you said that, because I agree 100%.
Not much to add to that, and we're down to 3 minutes, so I won't. But contrary to the 10-5-3 Kansas rule, the 10-5-3 Kansas rule. That's it. That's the new one. So I think certainly the farmers that I've been working with, are are way more cautious about jumping into organic than anybody that I knew back in the 80s and 90s. I think we've gone through the primary wave of those that are just doing it intrinsically and have some potential significant background. I think there's new farmers that are joining because they have a spouse or a loved one or even maybe themselves that have dealt with a health issue or something related to having cleaner, more nutrient-dense food. But ultimately, when they do enter into it, I think the real hopeful part right now for the crossroads of modern agriculture and organic agriculture is not only the ability to connect one-on-one like we do at events like this, connect digitally, the technologies and platforms that we have, the money that's starting to move into, back to the farm bill, there was another $20 million that got picked up for organic research, right? So, we're going to start to see seed breeders and things start to either bring about changes in genetics, things that we really need. We've been using some hand-me-down genetics to a large degree. So all of that stuff is going to just continue to pick up momentum. I agree that this is fun. I agree with the challenges. I agree with getting kicked in the ass every year. I don't think that's exclusive to organic. I think it does require some bit of a mind shift for all of us. The changes not only have to occur in the field, in the soils of the farms that are transitioning to organic, but in the farmers' minds and hearts as well.
All right. Thanks, gentlemen. Let's give him a round of applause.